All right, folks. Hey, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop this Monday, October 13th. How's the webcam? Are we angled the right way here, folks? On YouTube, on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Right down below here should be popping up lower left in just a second here. Down below at Cyber Trading You, just make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button channels or to our channel right down there. But how are we looking right now? Because I'll tell you, this whole weekend from even the end of last week into Sunday, I finally got everything set up. I got my monitors all set up here. I got like two curved monitors right now. Samsung's vertically lined up. I got two big guys right here, like 32-inch screens here. Looking pretty good. How about that? Kind of a rarity. How about that there? Brian, Margaret, Carlos, all of us here inside our live trading room. Let me know if I'm good to go for all of us there. Most importantly, our students and members inside our live trading room every Monday. You get the full commentary. You get everything as part of this workshop in our Traders Talk here. So let me know if you got me here loud and clear. Should be good to go, though. Right, yeah, you saw that on Instagram, right? Yeah, we had posted that on our Instagram channel, Cyber Trading University right there. But all right, excellent. Good day late all of us here. And if you can't see me, I'll be seeing a lot of us in just about 2 weeks' time, maybe even just a few days' time if you're around the Orlando area. Coming up actually this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we have the Money Show event coming up. I'll be with Fausto, and we'll be alongside a bunch of different presenters and just people throughout the financial service industry. Peter Schiff, Charles Payne, among a few. I know our friend Wiz Buckley is going to be there. And with that, not only do we have our Money Show event coming up just this week, that's actually right here. How about that? That's on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just in a few days' time right there in Orlando. But otherwise, coming up in just a couple of weeks, we have our big Trader Summit event. I'll be seeing students like Uday. I'll be seeing students like Charles joining us here. That's coming up just on the 22nd to 23rd, just next Wednesday into Thursday there. I'm losing track of my weekdays. But hey, there I am. Oh, Rich, we got you on the we got you on the docket there too, Rich. How about that? Alongside Fausto, obviously, alongside Kathy Lee, Bruce Pringle, and Trade Station as well. Looking forward to all of our great educators and presenters joining us. That'll be next Wednesday, Thursday. But with that said, though, what has gone on with this market? Right, this has been a crazy market, even from the beginning of last week on Monday. If you even remember that, I don't honestly. I just vaguely remember it. I barely remember what I had for breakfast in the morning. Right, but that's just where I'll tell you though. From Monday, the beginning of last week, all the way through, we were killing it. And long-term, short-term, you name it. Now, obviously, we all know what pretty much happened. I don't need to re-explain it to you. Now, what I want to show you pretty much is how we could trade it afterwards, what to look for from this very point, noon Eastern on October 13th. What to look for from this point forward, because it's very similar to what we've already looked for on previous drops. Thankfully, we've gotten a great reaction already on the way back up. And I was alluding from Friday, the end of last week, saying, listen, a 5% correction in the SPY, that's actually healthy in a bull market where you think 5% people are like, recession. That's very healthy for a bull market. There's been numerous pullbacks of 5% or more from the end of 2023, right? So a little healthy pullback would be nice. It creates a good buying opportunity. Now, I should say we said this where you don't know how long the pullback will be down towards. You can only prepare with different levels. And in today's market, where you have a lot of different talking heads out there, including the biggest talking head of them all, I mean, in terms of importance and significance, the president of the United States, anytime he's out there making any sort of comments, good or bad, you name it, it's going to move the markets even further. So with what had happened from the end of last week into the weekend, it seems like he's on the right track now with China and solving the tension in the Middle East with Israel, Iran, and or Hamas, I should just really say at this point. But otherwise, that led to a great slingshot back on up, even from the end of last week, the overnight gap. So let's look at the SPY here to begin, because we haven't really pulled back. We made this gap up from Friday after hours into Monday this morning. And from there, again, just even off this pre-market dip, it's just been perfect. Higher lows the whole way through, right? Even just regular session, double bottom. It may have dipped below that by a penny or two, probably to take stops out. Look at this. It broke below it probably by a couple mere pennies. 1 penny, I think. 2 pennies. But just to say, though, that we've been very strong all throughout the day, and we've been strong really with the overnight move back up. For anyone here that follows gaps, that might seem a little surprising, the fact that the SPY really hasn't even tried to fill that gap. But where you think about how strong we've already been, unless if we were to open up down lower here, then you should feel good about the potential of higher lows day by day by day by day. So is it possible that you can get a red day tomorrow and get a little bit of a pullback down to 662, 661, whatever? Yeah, absolutely. As long as we continue with higher lows from this point forward, we're looking pretty strong to resume this move back up again. And even at that, I was telling our students on Friday, now that I remember this here, let's see if we could pull up the receipts, as the kids like to call it these days. But pretty much what had happened back, it was on the 10th, where we were talking about the thought of the SPY filling the gap. Well, it didn't fill the gap. It did not fill the gap all the way down, but it was just a matter of looking for where your next level is. Oh, you know what? A lot of the chat somehow got deleted there. I don't know what happened there. But point being is that I was looking to have maybe a drop down towards 652 to have this, close get taken out because it had gapped up the following morning there. But it didn't do that all the way. And in fact, what it did was it ended up retaining support off of these wicks, right? It came into it Friday, broke below it and closed below it. But, pretty much after that point, reversal moved back up. And then the Trump news that had happened overnight from Saturday into Sunday that allowed the markets to pop up more. So really from this stage, again, just consider us back to where we were pretty much around mid-September, early October. I don't think that we're really in a bad state here within this market. If we were to have broken lower from this candle, different. If we were to hold below these wicks as resistance, all right, different. But we made such a big move overnight. Anyone that's like worrying about this, I really wouldn't be too concerned. Hey, we'll see what happens. Maybe in a week's time from now, there's some news that comes out, another talking head, maybe not even Trump, someone else out there. Whatever the case may be, things are always subject to change, right? It doesn't matter, who it is, whether it's you, me, Fausto, the world's greatest trader, anyone needs to be told that. So I say that to myself as much as I say that to you. So let's say what happens maybe in a week's time from now where we don't hold this area as support here, it breaks a little bit down from there. Then we'll have to ask, all right, well, what happens if we happen to revisit this close again, likely this close at this stage? That would be a pretty big support level technically. But I don't see any reason to think that we're going to drop back down there yet. So as long as we retain support here, 660s, 661 here today, that was a big area for me heading into the open. Now, if we put this on a 1-minute chart just to show the intraday move, what happened over the course of the day, given those two prices, put together as a level. So it's not always going to be instantly. It might take a few, stabs at it to just solidify. But the fact it didn't break lower, the fact it didn't come down to this pre-market dip, pretty damn bullish, right? Very bullish here on this move. So heading into the afternoon, it'll be interesting to see how far up higher the SPY can go because, the question is not a matter of if, it's when. So maybe over time, if you're just looking at the previous wicks and the previous resistance levels, I'm just kind of only looking at these two here because you had a up and downer, another up and down, but then it blew over. Kind of this trio here I would kind of go with. And I know you could probably keep poking a few more here up top, but it wouldn't shock me for today. I mean, by the end of today, SPY's at 663 and change. Have it go up to what, 665? That's super reasonable. Super reasonable at this point, right? Probably over the first line, probably over the second. Maybe we'll see what happens off the third. Just this trio here together, just for intraday resistance. Likely going to keep moving up over it, over the course of this week or next. But for today, even earlier, I wrote this to you in the chat just because I saw the SPY after class. I went pretty long in class just earlier because I had a tech issue. I wanted to make sure I made it up to our students. So I finished up class a little bit before we started this workshop. And I was telling you, I'm like, the SPY calls could be pretty nice right now. It needs to hold over. I gave you like a really tiny level, really right there. It wasn't so strong. But listen, if I'm going to be right there, right then, it had to have held pretty strong. So, basically to hold over 662 and change, been doing that. And ever since, I think that we can get up towards 65 by the close. That's just my thought. Very strong reaction off the SPY. And then I don't think that any of us here have the time to go over the Bitcoin move. For you to hear it, for me to even attempt to explain what happened on Bitcoin, have it drop all the way down to, I think it was 105,000. Over the course of the weekend, Bitcoin dropped as low as 105,000. I'll just show it for right now. I don't mind just showing it, but to even fathom the explanation to give to you here, it's crazy. So what do we got? Let's do an hour chart. Look at this spike down on Bitcoin. That's just on Coinbase. That's just on Coinbase. So where you really dig deep, if you want to do your own due diligence and kind of read up on it, everything that was going wrong in crypto was going wrong on the Binance exchange. So certain crypto coins spiked down so fast, and people are trading leverage in crypto, which makes it even more risky for them, but it makes it more volatile for the entire market the more that people are doing that. The point being is that with crypto, it was such a big spike down on Friday night and all the way back up. I was maybe 15 minutes late to this drop, maybe 30 minutes late to this drop. So I was pretty afraid of like entering a position on Bitcoin, Ethereum, any of these right out the gate. I wanted to wait until the Monday candle here to wait to see what happens. And I'll tell you what, I'm pretty happy with how everything's moving so far. But yeah, volatile times out here in this market, right? So, we'll just see what happens at least over the next few days on SPY, Bitcoin, ETH. But if SPY is going up and if Bitcoin holds here pretty nicely, I feel like rising tide will eventually lift boats and Bitcoin will eventually get a pretty strong move up. Ethereum probably even better. But more so than anything, just looking at the major indices, S&P, NASDAQ, Dow, whatever, this is a pretty strong move here today, but it's not too surprising given the overnight reaction that we had. All right. So, hey, if you want me to go over any large cap stocks on like Tesla, Nvidia, Coinbase, whatever it may be, let me know. Any earnings plays that you want me to look at here in just a bit. But I'll tell you, I'm in a couple swing positions here myself. The BBAI, everyone here knows all about those at this point. Just we've been in those for a while. Just going to ride the rest of those out. CIFR was a day trade that I held on to throughout the day today, and I just never got stopped out on. So that's a blessing. But this may turn into a swing trade, and I wasn't really expecting it to. I don't always try and do that, guys. But hey, if there's mountains of evidence that's piling up for you to try and do something, probably it's a good idea to try and think about it. So what does that even mean? Well, looking at this long-term graph, I sure wish I held on to CIFR from 10 or from 6, but now they're at 20. I'm in from 1788 this morning on an entry that I took earlier this morning. But this stock is at all-time highs. So that's just where right now, if there's no historical resistance to work with here on this trade, I already took half the position out earlier. This was actually before class started. But then otherwise, the second half, I may just ride out. There's no reason for me not to. Let me just pull this up here. I mean, I could sell under 20, I'm sure. If this holds and then it pulls back there, so be it. I already took half the trade out at 1950. So I feel excellent about the first half already. But the second half, listen, if this breaks over 20, our next resistance isn't until 21, maybe not until 22 from there. So with Bitcoin moving back on up a little bit, and if the market's holding, push on up, rising tide should lift some boats here, and we should look to see this 216,000 share seller get taken out. So, that may turn into a swing trade. We'll see how this reacts even over the next, 20, 30 minutes here as we finish up our workshop. Otherwise, though, a couple other stocks that I told you about just from this morning for any of our students here. Let's get some other names out here right now. Brian, Kathy, Mike, you got Chuck, you got Manny, you got Matt, you got Tung, you got Jason, Barbara, all from earlier. I was telling you this morning, I was looking for a move up on Ethereum. That was actually right after the market opened up this morning. I'd mentioned, hey, Ethereum, I'm looking for a play on the ETF here, ETHU. Just because if I'm expecting a pretty strong move up on crypto to go along with the major indices, I do believe that Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin over the next month, 2 months, 3 months on this bounce. So I'm trying to find the better play, and this is actually a double leveraged ETF. So this is something I'm going to ride out for a little bit on. I'm not up like too much on it from the trade. Like it might look like, oh, $2.30 is a lot. it's not that much for a dollar or for a $123 stock. I'm up about 1 to 2%. That sounds good. But if I'm not right with this assessment, or if who knows, whatever talking head comes out later on today that says something, if they spike the market or crypto, this is going to drop very quickly. 1.85% is not that big of a gain so far. So I'm not fully out of the weeds on that. This is nice, though. Did anyone, let me ask our students here inside our live trading room, did anyone jump in on this NVTS stock from earlier today? There's a lot that's moving, folks. So if I ever ask a question and you're not in one of these trades, no sweat. There's a lot that's moving that I'm not really going over. It's okay. But did anyone jump in on this NVTS stock from before? Any of our students here live, any of our members here, Kathleen, Kathy, there you go from last week. I think I remember seeing you talk about that, Kathy, right? Kathy L. Brian and Debbie say no. That's all right. No sweat, no sweat. Very similar line of reasoning that I got into this as I did on the Cipher trade, CIFR. So more or less, let me pull up the book map and I'll show you better here. There's our pullback, dropper. So would have been wiser to sell right there, right? As of now, we'll see where that leads us heading into the afternoon. But for the NVTS trade, Navitas, actually, before I even dig into this, what's the spread right now on NVTS? For any of our students here that have already gone through our phase 1 stock course, what's the spread on the stock right now, folks? Anna, Deborah, Brian, all of us here that are students have gone through phase 1. Looking at my screen, and you can look at yours too to answer, like your own platform, but answers on my screen. It's on the matrix on the right side. 1 penny, right? Perfect. And it's not like it's opening up. It's not like it's fluctuating. It's not like it's like wide and out of nowhere. It's like 10 cents. The stock has some pretty big orders to go along with the tight spread. You had support right down here at 850 for about 93,000 shares. Let's not discount that. Darker orange line here. It's about 93,000. Then up top here, $10, 160K. So you do have support, you do have resistance. And with that, I had a feeling that this would look to make a nicer move heading into the afternoon here. Nice little pullback, and it led to a pretty strong bounce afterwards. So I jumped in on this one from 921. I had gotten in that. My entry was before class started. I know that for sure. It was like probably when it ran up here at the time. It was like when it first was breaking over 10. There you go. There. So I didn't get stopped out, thankfully, but otherwise moving back on up. I think that this has the chance to be a great swing trade. When you look at the long term, I'll even start with the daily. It has some good resistance that we had back from June, back from late July, 915, 948. I'm in from 921. I'm in from 2 pennies, 3 pennies, whatever above this high, I think. 917 is technically the high. So I'm in about like 4 pennies above this one wick. I feel good about that because it was kind of stabbing it a few times and failing to make that better move. It even failed to do that here where it broke above it, I guess, on Friday, then came all the way back down on Friday. Sometimes these trades will just fall into your lap. I had no intention of swing trading Navitas at the market open or before the market opened. And I just kind of found it. I don't know if one of our students made a comment on it, or I found it maybe from my Benzinga scan, but I know the stock. We've traded the stock over and over in the past, and I know it's tradable. So all those things make me think like, oh, well, let me look at the long-term chart. I forgot about this stock for a bit. What's it been up to? Even if we talked about it last week, guys, I barely remember what I had for breakfast every morning. So that's just where I'll say we probably called it out Friday. Probably did. Pop and drop. But when I looked at it today and I saw this, kind of retesting this resistance area back from the summer, and then I'm like, all right, well, it's very tradable. It has a good order book. So I like that. I'd rather that than anything. So let's look long term. Let's go to the weekly chart, the monthly chart. What's it up to? And it still has some work to do. It has a little resistance back here from like around $11, spiked up here again back at the midway point of 23 and came back down. So that's likely where it's headed to next. So if I can get in from 920 here and then out around 11, at 11, I would be content with that, but I think that this stock is very bullish. This is a semiconductor stock. I believe that Nvidia had a deal with them before they ended up pulling their stake. I think that was back from even 2023, 2024. But after they dropped off, well, clearly they had some big pop back in May. Uh, you know what? Maybe if my timeline is mistaken, maybe even this was when Nvidia made a stake in them. Nvidia has done so much with these companies. SoundHound, APLD, Navitas here. So the timeline gets a little mixed up. But point being is that if Nvidia is still with them, great. But otherwise, it's a very healthy chart long term where it's making higher highs. It's trying to flip a resistance into a support. At least that's what I'm hoping for it to do right now. That's pretty much my game plan on this trade. Yeah, Kathy's saying Nvidia has a current partnership with them. Yeah, that's right. So SoundHound, they pulled the plug on for a little while. APLD, they had pulled the plug on for a little while. These stocks did pretty good. Oh, real quickly, for anyone here that's not a part of our live trading room, this was just right place, right time. But this is why you have to join us inside our room, if not as a trial member, then just otherwise as a full-fledged student. Because, hey, you get the full commentary. You're not just here from 12 to 1 o'clock Eastern on Mondays, right? You're here every day, if you remember. And that's where heading into the end of last week, I was able to get my chat here, but I was telling all of our students, a few of us, took the trade with me on the APLD stock from 28. Look how much this had popped up higher back from Friday, and obviously it's still lingering around here. But that's just where a lot of these charts, as long as they continue to make higher lows, there's a good shot for a higher high. And if it can make a fraction of this type of run here, we'll be content. This obviously is more than just a fraction. This is like pretty much the same type of move, if not higher. But this is all kind of moving in the same type of direction with the AI stocks, with the tech stocks, the nuclears, the uraniums, the you name it. So am I expecting the same thing to happen on Navitas? Yes and no. Yes and no. I'm not expecting 37, 38. If I can get that, then you might not be seeing me much longer. No, but I kidding aside, all kidding aside, but if this could make a move back up to 15, if we know that $5 and $10 prices are very strong, and this is going to break over $10 now coming up here, let's say, then if we're really bullish about this stock, then perhaps 15 could be a stronger target. Kind of just considering a $5 price. If it wants to really go up to 20, you could look at that. If there's any gaps on the long-term chart, then that's something to easily focus on. That's what got us out on part of the soon position and the SMCI position. And I love gaps. So you'll likely see a lot of that from me. I don't really see any gaps here on this long-term. Looking at the weekly, let me go to the daily here just to go back on that and see maybe just within the course of a week there was a gap. Nah, not really, right? All these gaps, I mean, this one got filled. All of this kind of has just been traded through already. That's fine. I mean, pretty much 11 is a whole number level, but otherwise maybe these wicks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holding under, this being a pop and drop. Probably even the close of this candle here to solidify it. 1083. So that could even be a nice intraday target on this stock for this afternoon, or maybe even going into tomorrow if this holds with higher lows. But the whole reason behind me jumping in on this stock was I just found it on my day trading list. So I don't always turn every day trade into a swing trade. I'm just scanning for everyone here. But I'm familiar with this stock because it's very tradable. It has a penny spread like Deborah, Nabil, Margaret Bell, Uday all wrote to me just before. So it's tradable. Now let's just look at the long-term graph. Is it some pharmaceutical stock that's breaking lower lows? Because before this gap up in May, I wouldn't have had any business to do with the stock, right? Lower highs, lower low here, loser. And whatever news came out here, this could have been the Nvidia partnership, but this changed the course of history for this stock, and it's been cruising since, right? So you can't just turn any day trade into a swing trade. Let me ask, who here is a phase 2 student of CTU? Who here has access to the phase 2 stock course If you're a silver, gold, platinum, or diamond student, just let me know here in the chat. Number of us, right? Margaret, Tim, Lee, Deborah, Lee. Actually, I got two Lees here. I got Leland and I got Lee. Got Jeff, Barbara, Kathleen, Alan, a lot of us, right? So just want to point out every few years, I've been working with Fausto for like 12 years now. Every few years, I try and restructure the curriculum, make slight adjustments to it in terms of the structure of it, in terms of the classes being taught. One of the classes I will be teaching going into the 2026 will be, it's not a full-blown swing trading course. It's not a full-blown swing trade course out there, but it is basically, I'll get the title of it right, but it's, turning day trades into swing trades. That's pretty much the premise of that one class. I'll be inserting into the phase 2 course beginning at the 2026. But something like this, hey, when you look at the recent resistance, when you look at the retesting of that resistance, even dating back to just Friday, just the previous trading day, right? More kept poke. All right, well, eventually we should feel pretty good about that move. Broke over resistance, moved up. Hey, real quick, Shaffin, Alan, Kathleen, Barbara, you got Bill here, you got Jerry here. Great to see Jerry rejoining us here, one of our longtime members, I believe. All of us. When a stock breaks over resistance and it runs off of it, resistance should flip into what? Support, right? So that's where, at least otherwise, yeah, did it hold it perfectly? No, it broke below it and back over it. My under and over, right? Actually, did that pretty damn nice. Now, is there another price level that could complement a chart level like this? Well, yeah, I mean, you could look at a whole number level like $9, $9, right? So for the NVTS, it wasn't as big as what popped up later on, right? But at $9, this ended up getting hit. Order got taken out right here at 9. And that could contribute to my chart level as far as flipping a resistance into a support. There was a bid here for about 62,000 shares, right? That was there. So iceberg on the bid, it just naturally broke over a chart resistance and that whole number. So I'm simply looking for the flippening and got it. And now we blasted over whatever the hell this is. What the hell is this? 356,000 shares were on the ask at 950. Now, I think that we were coming off class at that point. I told you I went pretty long with our students just because I wanted to make sure that it was worth your time. I kind of started late, had a little hiccup on my platform, on my computer. But if I wasn't in this trade already, and if I was looking to take this as a trade, truth be told, I would have expected more of a fight here. I would have expected at least a little bit more of a fight, and I wouldn't have expected it for this to be as effortless. So if you were waiting for an entry here, but you were a bit gun shy, a bit cautious, I don't blame you. Typically, the more times a stock tests resistance in a smaller concentration, it's more bound for it to break. Well, let me tell you, that's pretty much what happened with the chart level, right? With the chart level, the one that I use, the 917, we'll just go with here, this peak. Well, once it held at this candle well, and you had a couple falsies in there too. Well, it already did it once here. It's the first time in a while, so I wouldn't have been as convinced. But even the next day, so once it broke over that, in my opinion, that's what gave it more leverage to just keep going up. But even if you're not privy to that, and if you're just thinking, okay, it's going to false break 950 probably once or twice, and then it can make that move. Well, after this iceberg order showed up, it just got broken through pretty quickly, didn't it? Maybe later in the day, if this wants to, have a shake, it's probably due for a pullback. So it wouldn't surprise me if this pulls back coming up here. And at that point, hey, if you missed out on the 950 breakout of resistance, then look to see if you can get that flipping of resistance into support. That's all. So at least there are points where what we anticipate doesn't always come true. How does the song go? You can't always get what you want. So here, hey, this was actually too good to be true. Most traders here, I would expect to, find a little turbulence here. It wouldn't be so effortless, so easy. This is not during prime time trading. This is not 9:45 in the morning. So, hey, for that reason, you should probably be a bit more you should be a bit more hesitant here. The fact it smashed over it, don't pull your hair out. Just flip your mind around here. Now you could say, all right, well, to have this breakover resistance and run resistance should be support. So we'll see if we can get that later on today. And if it's not from 950, then maybe it's even from 10. Maybe it's even from 10 here. But the more it keeps going up, 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 you're probably even more hesitant to do that off of 10 than you were at 950. Um, that's if you're not impulsive. So, if we're a bit patient, maybe we'll see this shake back down. We get that 950, and then we go from there. All right. So, that's basically the Navitas trade, at least for the time being, between Ethereum, Navitas, Cypher. I'm down on GDRX. I feel bad about that one because this just was a lemon. What a lemon this thing was. This had popped off of news that the CEO had said that they're in talks with the Trump administration. And listen, when we saw what happened with Intel, granted, it pulled back for 3 days, then it ran, so it wasn't so immediate. But I thought that there would be a stronger short squeeze on a stock like a GDRX. And this is just where I'll tell you, this isn't like the greatest long-term chart, but that's the risk I ran, and it's not paying off. So clearly there's a big difference between this type of long-term chart and obviously a chart like CIFR, but also NVTS. This is making higher highs. This built a higher low. The GDRX, I got to tell you, there was a lot more speculation in, but I really thought it would hold better. It didn't. So I'm down on the short trade right now, about 6%. Stinks. If this pops back up, I'll probably just get out break even, and then that's it. But at least we've had a pretty strong month so far. It's not always going to be perfect every single month. There's always going to be a couple of lemons that get in the way. I know Fausto brought it up earlier today. I think on Friday he said it was his worst trading day or second worst of the calendar year. This shit happens, right? I took a 4% loss on Path, and that actually moved back on up and made new highs after. I was real upset about that. But what you got to do in those moments is just bite your tongue and move on to other stocks. Because the more that you try and trade this one, at least the odds would be that you're probably going to put more emotion into the next trade if it's the same stock. That didn't work that way with me on Celsius, where I wish I held at this point, but I got in from 26 out around 36 or 35. I took a loss on that to begin. The SMCI trade I took a loss on at first before we got the gap to fill here. It was perfect after. So you could be very calculated and still jump back in on the same trade after. But it opens you up to adding more emotion into just what you're doing. So with Path, I didn't really focus on a trade on this again, and it just flew back on up without me, right? So you know what I did there? I bit my tongue and I said, all right, let me just focus on other stocks. What's THU doing today? What's Ethereum trying to do today? Because I had a pretty strong level on Ethereum. I thought that was going to do pretty nicely this week off of big level. So hey, you know what? Bite my tongue, eat a loss on one or two trades, move on to the next, right? Ethereum cryptocurrency holding perfectly over big resistance here, right around 4,000, right around 4,100. Just that put together today, holding a support after the big drop that we had. So that's just the next trade. And that's where you say there's always going to be new opportunity. The more that you worry about the loss that you just took, or the more that you're like GDRX, I'll eventually eat that loss, whether if it pops up and if it does take me out break even, great. But even here, I got to figure out, well, what happens if it breaks below these lows? It's pretty much near there now. So if it can't even hold this, then I'll just eat the loss and say, all right, let's just find something else to make that money back on. That's all. Now, with that in mind, that's a whole class I got for you, and a full 60-minute class that I'm prepping up over the next couple of months heading into the 2026 calendar. All right, real quick. I don't know if where my inbox would pop up, if it would be on that screen or this one. All right, so real briefly, I had a question that came in pretty much right when we started Traders Talk. A really good question. Allows me the chance to go over a couple of these things that are moving here. But I want to point out that I currently, and we're going to keep this class, But we currently have a whole class on how to trade halts. If you join us next week, this week, next week in the phase 2 stock course, I'm going to be teaching a whole class on how to trade halts. So look forward to seeing most of our students there if you're silver level or higher. But had a question come in briefly from one of our members, Nabil. Hey, when a stock is halted on TradeStation's platform, where does it show the resumption price? Where does it show resumption? Yeah, price, not time. So where does it show the resumption price? So this is where, to go over a halt or two briefly, we can talk about STI. STI was another flavor of the day type of move just for today. It's still going up nice. But there were a few halts on this stock earlier, right? Give me a moment. I'll tell you exactly how many. So 9:33 in the morning, there was one that was to the downside, and then at 10:15 there was one to the upside. At 10:43 in the morning, there was another one to the upside. So there were a few. Now, when you have these volatility halts, Nabil, typically volatility halts are 5 minutes. So there's something that I say like, we use the 30-second rule. It's Fausto's famous 30-second rule, where if a stock is not moving within 30 seconds of you entering, odds are it's just not worth it. Doesn't mean it's going to be a loser, but it means it's likely to take its time. It likely doesn't have the type of momentum that you were expecting for it to have. So, I'm a bit more wordy with how I explain that. That's where I tell you all the time, when a stock breaks through a big level, you should be getting a pretty big move shortly after. So the reason I bring this up is because, well, I kind of give like a comedic joke. I'm like, well, it's not like the market makers over there at Goldman Sachs are like, it's not like they got their stopwatch on them, like looking out over like Genevieve's trade, Andrea's trade, my trade, and they're like, oh, it's the 30-second Fausto rule. They're not doing that, guys. You know what I mean? It's a generalized rule of thumb. But the reason I say this is because volatility halts are that type of fixed rule. They are 5 minutes. And if they're not 5 minutes, add another 5 minutes onto it. So where you look at a stock getting halted, let's say, well, let me get the pre-market data back up here. And that always gets lost whenever I go to crypto. So shortly after the market opened up, this got halted going down, right? Got smashed and halted to the downside here. So pretty much this is where you say, all right, what time did it get halted? 9:33, 9:34, 9:34. This bar, it'll stick. 9:34. So 5 minutes, right? 9:39. And if it's not 5 minutes, it will be 10. I would say like 95% of the time on a volatility halt, it's a 5-minute halt. And if it's not a 5-minute halt, it will be a 10-minute. That's just our rule of thumb right there. Right there, right? So notice the candle goes from 9:34 to 9:39. So this was a 5-minute halt. That's how you could tell. Now, TradeStation won't show a resumption time like on a ticker, on a screen, but that's our kind of rule of thumb. Now, most of the halts that we trade are volatility halts. There could be news-related halts where a stock gets halted for days or for hours otherwise, maybe days. I've seen weeks. But that's where it would be best for you to look on the NASDAQ website, nasdaqtrader.com, and they'll often post a resumption time if there's projected to be one. Let's say if it's off of news pending. So, that's a little different. That's for news pending, or if the SEC halted the stock. I remember just briefly, because another gap that we filled and then some, Tilray, TLRY, this ended up getting halted back on January 7th this year, and it didn't reopen until January 9th. Or I'm sorry, the 8th, and then it didn't reopen until the 10th. That's what it was. And, you go from January 8th to January 10th. That's not a weekend. That's not a holiday. There's no holiday January 9th. That's just one day, not two. So that's not a weekend. That got halted for a full day or more because, likely there was news coming out, or maybe the company halted it, or maybe the NASDAQ themselves halted it from being traded, maybe some investigation or so. So, point being is that for those halts, you always have to check the NASDAQ website and just, cross-reference and see, all right, is there a resumption time listed or not? There might not be one, and you kind of have to just wait on it a little bit. That's all. All right. Now, with that said, let's go back to that STI because I'm not going to do the full shebang and go through like the Halt class that I'll be doing even the beginning of next week. But let's at least go through the Halt print lines here and just kind of see. 1055, big print right there. Likely will be a level going forward. Yep, right here. Because the more that it kept getting poked here as resistance, it broke over it. Resistance flipped into support at first, ran up off it after. We got halts where else? It was at 1013 and at 1045. Apparently, there was a halt on STI at 1013. Maybe my intel is incorrect there. 1015. So what was on that candle? Yeah, okay. So on this pop, then it got halted and it reopened up a little higher. Ultimately what happened was that the first halt print ended up creating support afterwards here. So there was a lot of cut through afterwards, but it held the original halt price as clean support and then ran up from there. So your next best halt was at 1043 in the afternoon or in the morning. Rich made the post at 43. So the stock got halted at 1039 technically. It got halted at 1039 and this one was a 10-minute halt. It reopened up just 10 minutes later, not 5. So whatever the rhyme or reason was for this making this to be a 10-minute halt versus a 5, you would be sitting here with your stopwatch and you'd be saying, all right, 5 minutes. Let's wait to see this reopen up because like 95% of them are 5-minute holds. So you should always go into it thinking it's going to be a 5-minute hold. Now, the second it's 5 minutes and 2 seconds, yeah, no, it's likely going to be a 10-minute hold then. That's the rule. That's the line of thinking that we have. And then for this exact process, yeah, this is where you get like the stopwatch. You are that type of person. You are that like, oh, let me get the 5-minute rule. It's true. And if it's not 5 minutes, it's 10. And then really here in this case, this was a 10-minute halt. It reopened up at 14.50, $14.50. So again, a lot of cut through at first. It's not so immediate where this ends up making its pop, but the more it ends up stabbing it going up, you should be looking for that break out. And then from there, the flippening of that resistance into a support right there. So pretty cool to see how the halt print levels, the big prints that come in after the stock reopens up from a halt, those became key levels for the stock, but it took time. It took time for them to become key levels. So this is where I tell you, you're always going to find more room for entry if you're just patient. This price did not materialize as a clear level of support until about 40 minutes later. This didn't hold up as support until about an hour. It's pretty much a clean hour that's gone by. So you can catch the breakouts. Absolutely. If you're there for the breakouts, all the more to you. But just know if you ever miss the breakout, it's like, okay, well, hey, resistance could become support, right? And it does. So, that's essentially what happens here. That's essentially what happened on the Navitas. And that's essentially what happened on the CIFR. And if it happens off 20 on CIFR, then we'll see where this takes us here heading into the afternoon. Because even on this nasty shake, well, it still held higher lows. It still held support off the wicks and just coming right back on up. So I think there's pretty good ability for these trades to just continue. Just make sure that you keep playing the higher low game, right? We were saying that from last week, guys, right? All of us here inside our room, Belle, Genevieve, Andrea, Alex, Albert, Leda, Jazz, all of us here. That was kind of the theme of the end of last week. You saw a continuation. Maybe it took some time. Maybe stocks got choppy for a little bit, but choppy doesn't mean lower lows. The stock can still go up after being choppy, but the choppy consists of higher lows. So even here on the Navitas, double bottom, higher lows. Hey, look where it landed later on. The CIFR, sorry, CIFR. For the CIFR trade, higher lows after, and look where it landed afterwards, right? So, as long as you have the higher low game play out, then there could still be room. It's okay to be optimistic. And if you're already up a lot on the morning already, then this is just all for academics, right? This is just just for the love of the game. But that's where if you're not up enough yet, if you haven't made your day's pay yet, if you're not up that cushion, then you don't always want to just remain optimistic and hopeful and wishful and play the higher low game. Listen, if the stock is moving up and you got the higher low game playing out and you want to take the money and run because you don't want to have that profit get washed away on some shake again, sounds pretty responsible to do. So even here, like if you had gotten out before it popped up a little bit more, you're like, oh, it played out really well off support. Then all the more to you. And then you look for a new entry if you're able to find one on the stock. Or maybe that's where you look at a different stock and see what the Navitas trade is doing itself here, right? So, that's where I just bring up to you. There's always plenty of other fishies out there in the same. Did I do GWH yet? I did not. Moving up nicely. I think we're going to finish up our workshop here in just a bit. I gave a pretty good point there on the STI, so the same rules apply there as they do on the GWH. That's where, again, for Lynn and Randy, I know that you're always there with myself in class, and for all of our students otherwise. I do a full 60-minute class on this stuff in phase 2. That'll be coming up next week, I believe. On Monday of next week, we'll finish up. We'll do the phase 2 course wrap up with these 2 classes here. All right. All right, folks. So, hey, let me know if there's any other questions outside the halts, outside the halt stuff. If there's any other questions you'd want me to look at here before we finish up. Market higher lows, no surprise there. Leda, as always, appreciate you on the simulcast, YouTube, as well as inside our live trading room. Yeah, we're getting a nice push right now on Ethereum again. We had a little dip early in the morning, but again, higher lows. Even here, a little rummage, but Wix came up pretty good, and now we're pushing back on up. This was a huge level to look at on the long-term graph. If you're looking for a move higher, resistance needs to flip into support. So very soon, I can't give you an official date yet, unfortunately, guys, but very soon we're going to be beginning to do webinars on crypto and how to trade Bitcoin and Ethereum using our strategy here at CTU, not just charting, but more importantly, following the big orders out there on level 4. So, that's something to look forward to, especially heading into the beginning of next year. There's something very soon that we'll likely announce, but just keep in mind, you'll be hearing me talk a lot more about this, not just on Bitcoin, as we are all familiar with, but also Ethereum, Solana, if you're interested, or some of the others. But I'm just letting you know, I am taking a big position on Ethereum, not just this ETF, which I just did on smaller size, but just on my Coinbase account itself, just a leveraged Ethereum position. So I'm looking for a move up towards 5,000, if not a little bit higher, going into the end of October, beginning of November. We'll see if that holds true. All right, folks, let me see. Last things quickly here. Jerry, great to have you back as well, my friend. CIFR going to pop, says Tim. Ooh, we're at 80. All right, Tim, fine. We'll hang on the stick here for another 2 or 3 more minutes. We're going to wrap up in just a moment, though. I was about to jump off here, but I'm like, you know what? If this darn thing comes up right now and we have the chance to watch this breakout live, may as well end off on some fireworks, right? All right, you know what? Let's just play the waiting game on this at least, because we've been waiting to see this iceberg. It was at $20, right? Not the 1990. Ooh, okay. How about this update? They pulled part of the order. Look at that. Oh my God, a clean 100K just got pulled. A clean 100K got pulled at 20, and they placed it at 90. So it's the same person. I was wondering, like, is that someone adding on top of that? That would be tough. No, it's the same person. They pulled part of it at 20, placed it at 1990. All right, well, watch the right side of my screen here. I'll move this up for right now. Just make it easy for us to look at this. So look at the right side of the screen, and also look at the volume bars that will kick in here momentarily if this order at 90 gets filled, and then the order at 20 that also gets filled. What do I like? ETHU versus ETHA, asks Brian. Well, there's the first iceberg on the cipher that got hit. Right, look at that. Big spike of volume kicking in right there. Next up is 20. Why ETHU versus ETHA? Great question. Is this is the Ethereum? It's like the black. Is this like the BlackRock one? It's the BlackRock one, right? I'd say this is really good to use as well. I mean, this is complementary to IBIT, right? This is the iShares Bitcoin ETF. ETHA is the iShares Ethereum ETF. Well, I'll give you a real reason in a second, Brian, like an actual reason. I didn't think of ETHA when I was lining up my trade. So, quite frankly, if I had this in mind, good chance I would strongly consider this. Very good chance, absolutely. Because if I know it's the BlackRock one and it's got like as good liquidity as the IBIT, then this really is a great play. If I had this in mind at the time, then I could see myself doing this. There is a real reason though, and this would be because the ETHU is double leverage. 2x, and that is similar to BITX, which is a double leverage Bitcoin ETF of its own. It's not the BlackRock one. It's not the big one, but it is one that has decent liquidity. And I know, and I say that in terms of volume total, not good liquidity on the book, but it trades millions of shares a day. So I'm not too worried about position sizing on this. Also, it's expensive, but it's double leveraged. So I'm thinking that if my plan works, I'll get much more of a reward. Now, I didn't do options on it. So if you're doing options, you might even be able to leverage it even more than 2x. So either way, you know what I mean? Either way, I wanted to catch the bounce this morning. I thought we'd see a pretty sharp move up early on today. I'm on my new monitor setup here. I don't have my options platform open. I'm kind of a mess this morning today too. So when I thought about Ethereum, I'm like, ooh, well, the ETHU, like, okay, then, like, let me jump in on this pretty quickly. I got in on this during pre-market, right? So, I mean, pretty much when the market opened up, just so you know where I'm coming from, I am a stickler. It's my rule set and what I want, myself and Fausto to do here and to stick to the watch list to begin, right? So I posted this at 9:31. I made my decision to jump in. It was like at 9:10 in the morning, 9:15 in the morning or so. It was like when Fausto was doing the meeting, when he just finished up the meeting. And, I want you guys to stay focused on the list he just made. So I wasn't trying to like blurt out too much at the time, be a distraction to him. But as soon as the market opened up, I just kind of told you there. And that's basically me saying I entered that trade in pre-market. And then from there, it's been on a pretty good move since. All right, last things here, folks, before we finish up. I think that's all I got here from all of us inside our live trading room. Hey, if you're joining us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc., later, not you, because you know best. But otherwise, just make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button down below. At Cyber Trading U is our YouTube account. That's our X account as well. Find us on Instagram at Cyber Trading University. That's full name. But otherwise, whether it's our full name or right down below there, Cyber Trading U, just make sure that you're in tune with our live streams, all of our events that we're posting on social media. If you're in the Orlando area this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, would love to see you there myself. I'll be with Fausto. We'll be at the Orlando Money Show. A bunch of big presenters and names throughout the financial service industry. So if you're a neighbor of mine around the Orlando area, would love to see you there. But otherwise, though, if you're interested in joining our live trading room, just go right down to the link scrolling down below on the bottom there, just ctu.co/trial. If you're fancy with your phone, with your camera, scan that QR code right there, and that will get you access to our live trading room for a full week. And you could join about 118 of us here right now. Shaffin, Deborah, Tim, Brian, Sharon, you got Jerry, like I said, rejoining us, Lynn and Randy, Leda, all of us here. So looking forward to having us there, but otherwise for all of us there right now, our next broadcast will be at 2:30 Eastern, just for the afternoon meeting. And then we got class later on today as well at 3 o'clock Eastern. We'll be continuing along with the Phase 1 stock course. If you're a student here, I'm in instructor mode right now. There we go. We'll be continuing along with Phase 1, lesson number 2 lined up this afternoon. I got a Bluetooth mouse now, and sometimes it's like not catching, and it's like kind of frustrating. If anyone knows that feel right now, I'm going through exactly that. But pretty much as I get my laser pointer here. There we go. Phase 1, lesson 2. That'll be our next class lined up this afternoon. If you're a bronze level student of ours, if you got the Cyber Group Plus membership, you have access to the phase 1 course. So later on today, we'll continue along with our next live class. All right, folks. But otherwise, I'll catch up with everybody just later on, just shortly after 2:30 Eastern. Take care.